There comes a point in life when the objects we once treasured begin to feel like a burden. The cupboards that used to feel cozy now seem to sigh as we pass by. The containers, once neatly organized and filled with keepsakes, now hold fragments of a life that seems far away. Even the storage under the bed doesn't just contain items, it holds the ghosts of who we once were. We often rationalize keeping these things, just in case, or for a future day, knowing deep down that that day rarely arrives. What used to bring us happiness now silently asks to be set free. It's a peculiar truth. The same possessions that marked our past achievements can, over time, start to pull us down. This shift is subtle at first, as excess slowly accumulates, familiar and quiet, like a creeping mist. But then one day, you look around and realize your living space no longer reflects your current life. It shows your reluctance to move forward. The reality is that the things we desperately cling to can ultimately start clinging to us. Perhaps the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is not to preserve every piece of the past, but to create space for the present. Because the affection we once invested in those items doesn't vanish when we release them, it simply evolves. For those who find this idea resonates, please consider supporting this message. If you're on YouTube, go beyond just liking and tap the hype button. This feature helps elevate the voices of older adults, and with 3 hypes available per week, every tap helps this content reach more people over the age of 60. I used to believe that every object in my house was essential to my identity, and that letting go would mean erasing my own history. Each photo, piece of furniture, and small memento felt like a chapter in the story of my life. I convinced myself that if I discarded these things, I would lose parts of myself, my memories, my connections, even my direction. Yet gradually, I began to understand that the more I surrounded myself with historical markers, the harder it was to feel engaged in my actual life. My home, once vibrant with joy and purpose, started to feel like a warehouse for unresolved feelings. My issue wasn't sentimentality, it was being stuck. My decision to declutter wasn't a long-term plan. I simply woke up one morning with an inner prompt, a sense that my environment didn't align with the emotional peace I desired. I picked up an old picture frame, and rather than just seeing the smiling faces, I saw the true weight it carried, the pressure of time, past expectations, and unresolved issues. The heaviness wasn't in the objects themselves, it was in the narrative attached to them. Years of feeling responsible for preserving the past, of being the memory keeper, and feeling guilty for even considering discarding anything. That experience taught me that decluttering is much more than cleaning a room. It's about cleansing your spirit. Every container, every shelf, and every box became an internal dialogue. I offered forgiveness to my younger self for wasteful spending. I forgave the version of me who kept gifts out of obligation. I forgave all those past selves, the bereaved, the parent, the professional, the dreamer, who tried so hard to maintain perfect control. With every item I released, a lightness settled over me. I could breathe more deeply. My living space started to feel brighter, more welcoming and vibrant. It ceased being a memorial to who I was and began to feel like a true reflection of who I am becoming. Looking back, I've identified 8 profound insights that changed my perspective on aging, freedom, and love. Each insight carried a lesson, sometimes gentle, sometimes earned through struggle, but all of them have transformed me in unexpected ways, and perhaps they will be meaningful to you too.
1. I realized I'd been living as a curator, not a participant. For most of my life, I thought I was preserving my story. Every photograph, every receipt, every keepsake was a piece of who I used to be. I told myself it was sentimental, that it meant I valued my history. But one day, while dusting the same bookshelf for the 100th time, it hit me. I wasn't living in a home anymore, I was maintaining an archive. I had become a curator of memories instead of a participant in the life still unfolding before me. It wasn't that I didn't love those memories. I did. Some of them were beautiful reminders of who I'd been. The mother who stayed up late sewing Halloween costumes, the husband who saved ticket stubs from every anniversary date, the woman who kept every letter her children ever wrote from college. But over time, those tokens of love began to feel less like warm memories and more like heavy obligations. Each one demanded space, energy, and attention that I no longer had to give. The truth is, we often confuse keeping with honoring. I thought that by holding on to everything, I was protecting my past, but what I was really doing was avoiding the present. The more I held on to old moments, the less room I had for new ones. My living room had become a museum, neat, meaningful, and completely still. When I finally began to let go, I noticed something unexpected. My home started to feel lighter, yes, but so did I. I began waking up with energy instead of guilt. I stopped tiptoeing around boxes that represented someday and started asking what I needed today. I realized that I didn't need a museum to prove I'd lived a meaningful life. My life itself was the proof. For seniors like me, it's easy to feel like our best chapters are behind us, so we hold on tighter to the evidence. But decluttering taught me that love and meaning don't fade when we release the objects tied to them. In fact, they grow. Because when we stop curating the past, we finally step back into the story that's still being written, the one we get to live right now.
2. I learned that clutter was my silent form of control. For years, I found comfort in knowing exactly where everything was. The receipts tucked in drawers just in case, the extra linens I might need someday, the stacks of letters and souvenirs that whispered, "You still matter." My home was predictable, stable, and filled with familiar things. And yet, deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That sense of order I thought I'd built wasn't peace, it was control. It was my way of holding the world still when everything else felt like it was slipping beyond my reach. You see, aging teaches us humility in the most unexpected ways. Our bodies change, friends move away or pass on, children grow into lives of their own. Technology evolves faster than we can blink. And in the middle of all that, clutter can start to feel like an anchor, a way to keep something, anything, the same. I convinced myself that my belongings offered stability, but in truth, they were the walls I built to protect myself from uncertainty. Each drawer I filled, each box I stacked, became a small declaration: I'm still in control. But the irony was that the more I tried to hold on, the less control I actually had. My space became crowded, my routines rigid, my days consumed with maintaining what no longer served me. It wasn't just the physical clutter, it was emotional. It was the need to manage every corner of my life so I wouldn't have to face the parts one couldn't manage anymore. The day I started decluttering, it wasn't because I suddenly felt brave. It was because I was tired. Tired of defending a house full of things that no longer reflected the woman I was becoming. As I let go of old clothes, paperwork, and even small sentimental items, something subtle shifted inside me. I realized that every item I released was a way of telling myself, I trust what's next. Letting go didn't mean giving up control, it meant redefining it. Control wasn't about keeping everything the same, it was about choosing what truly deserved space in my life. It was about making room for ease, for spontaneity, for faith that the future could hold beauty I hadn't yet imagined. For many of us over 60, clutter becomes the armor we wear against uncertainty. But true peace isn't found in holding tight. It's found in loosening our grip. When I stopped trying to control everything through my possessions, I discovered something far more powerful than predictability. I found trust. Trust in myself, trust in change, and trust that even as life shifts, I can still stand steady in who I am.
3. I discovered that my space was telling my story without me saying a word. It happened one quiet Sunday afternoon when my grandchildren came to visit. They were playing hide and seek, darting between furniture and laughing in that carefree way only children can. I stood there watching them, smiling until I noticed something through their eyes. My home, the place I'd always thought of as warm and welcoming, suddenly looked crowded, not cozy, but cluttered. Every surface carried something: framed photos, souvenirs, gifts, papers, mementos of decades past. It felt like the house was whispering, "This is who I was," over and over again. That day, I realized something powerful. Our homes tell stories whether we intend them to or not, and mine was stuck in the past. It spoke of years when I was raising children, working long hours, attending every family gathering, but it didn't say a word about who I was now. A woman rediscovering herself after 60, learning to live slower, simpler, freer. I didn't want my story to end as a nostalgic collection of what used to be. I wanted my space to reflect who I was becoming. And that shift changed everything. Decluttering stopped being a chore and started feeling like editing a book, one where every item was a sentence, and I finally had the power to decide what still belonged in the story. As I sorted through drawers and boxes, I began asking different questions. Not, do I still need this, but does this still represent me? The answers were often surprising. I found old clothes that once gave me confidence, but now felt like costumes for a life I'd already outgrown. I found stacks of books on parenting, office supplies from a career long behind me, and decor that once fit a busy family home, but now made the rooms feel smaller. Each thing I let go of gave my home and myself room to breathe. Slowly, the heavy air of what was lifted, and a lighter, truer energy took its place. I started to see my space not as a memory vault, but as a mirror of who I am today. Someone content, evolving, and unafraid to start new chapters. When my grandchildren visited again months later, something beautiful happened. They ran in wide-eyed, and one of them said, "Grandma, your house feels so big now." I smiled because they didn't just notice the open space, they felt the freedom in it. My home finally spoke for me again, not with cluttered nostalgia, but with quiet confidence. Decluttering, I've learned, isn't just about what we remove, it's about what we reveal. My space now tells a new story, one of grace, growth, and the courage to live in the present tense.
4. I stopped equating love with keeping everything I was given. For most of my life, I believed that love could be measured in objects, in the quilts my mother sewed by hand, in the chipped teacups from my grandmother's china set, in the birthday cards I'd kept for decades because I couldn't bear to throw away a single word written by the people I loved. Every item felt sacred, a small piece of someone's affection that I was responsible for protecting. And so I held on. I filled boxes, drawers, and closets with what I called love, afraid that letting go would somehow mean forgetting the people who gave them to me. But over time, the weight of those things became something else entirely. I began to realize that the very love I was trying to preserve was being buried under piles of guilt. There were moments when I'd open a closet to reach for something simple only to be met with a flood of emotion. Memories, yes, but also the quiet pressure of obligation. I wasn't just holding on to gifts, I was holding on to the fear that releasing them would make me ungrateful or unloving. Then one day, while sorting through a box of keepsakes, I found a letter my late sister had written years before. It ended with the line, "Don't get too sentimental about this stuff. Love doesn't live in things." I remember sitting there, letter in hand, and realizing she was right. The objects weren't the love itself. They were simply vessels for it. And like any vessel, they eventually run their course. The love had already been lived, already been shared, already been felt. Keeping every single token wasn't honoring the relationship, it was trapping it in time. So I began a new ritual. Each time I picked up an item tied to someone I loved, I paused and allowed myself to remember, really remember, the laughter, the hugs, the lessons, the life we'd shared. Then I would say thank you. Sometimes I kept the item. Other times I let it go. But either way, the love remained undiminished. I've learned that true love isn't fragile. It doesn't depend on a sweater, a mug, or a photo album to stay alive. It lives in us, in the way we speak, in the way we remember, and in the way we continue to love even after things are gone. Now, when I walk through my home, I feel love everywhere, not because it's stacked on shelves or boxed in closets, but because it breathes in the open space. Decluttering didn't erase my love for the people who've touched my life, it amplified it. It gave that love room to move, to grow, and to be felt in the present, not just in the past.
5. I found that empty space invites new purpose. For years, I couldn't remember the last time I saw an empty table in my home. Every surface had a purpose, or at least that's what I told myself. The dining table doubled as a storage zone for mail, newspapers, unfinished projects, and important things that somehow never found a permanent home. The guest room became a holding area for items that didn't fit anywhere else. Even my nightstand was a miniature archive. Books I meant to read, old receipts, photos waiting for frames. The clutter didn't just fill the room, it filled every quiet moment with noise. When I finally started clearing things away, I wasn't expecting transformation, I just wanted to breathe again. But what surprised me wasn't the clean surfaces, it was the silence that followed. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but peaceful. For the first time in years, my home didn't feel crowded with yesterday's plans. It felt open, almost like it was waiting for something new. At first, that openness was uncomfortable. There's a strange kind of vulnerability in empty space. It forces you to face what you've been avoiding, your next chapter, your creativity, your longing for something more. But as I sat in my newly cleared living room, sunlight spilling across a bare table, I felt something shift. My mind, once cluttered like my home, began to unclench. Ideas started bubbling up again, gentle, unhurried thoughts that had been drowned out by the noise of too much. One morning, I picked up an old paintbrush I hadn't touched in over 20 years. I didn't plan it. I just felt drawn to it. Another day, I started writing notes to my future self, small reflections about what I was learning, who I was becoming. And just like that, my space transformed into something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. That's when I realized empty space isn't a void. It's an invitation. It's the physical form of hope, a quiet declaration that says, I'm ready for what's next. For seniors like me, it's easy to believe that our best years are behind us, that the clutter represents the fullness of life we once had. But I've come to see it differently. The space I've created isn't about what I've lost. It's about what I'm now free to discover. Now, when I see a clear table, I don't rush to cover it. I leave it open, knowing it's a reminder that my story isn't finished. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to give our lives and our homes enough room to grow into what's next.
6. I realized decluttering can be a way of saying goodbye on my own terms.
No one really talks about how emotional decluttering can be. We think it's just about sorting through things, but sometimes it's about facing feelings we've quietly stored away. The grief, the endings, the parts of life that didn't get a proper goodbye. I didn't know how much of my past I had tucked into drawers and boxes until I started opening them. It wasn't clutter I was avoiding, it was closure. There was a box in the back of my closet that I hadn't touched in over a decade. Inside were my late husband's glasses, his old watch, a few notes we'd left each other on kitchen counters during busy mornings. I thought keeping them made me feel close to him. But as I sat there holding those things, I realized I hadn't felt closeness, I'd felt stuck. That box was a wound I'd refused to let heal. Grief has no timeline, and letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means giving yourself permission to live without holding pain so tightly. Decluttering gave me that permission. As I went through each item, I allowed myself to remember, to cry, and sometimes to smile. I said goodbye in a way that felt sacred, not rushed, not pressured, but gentle. There were other moments of farewell too, not just to people, but to versions of myself. The career woman who once thrived on structure and deadlines, the young mother who thought her worth depended on being needed every second, the woman who thought she had to hold everything together. As I cleared space, I found myself whispering, "Thank you. Thank you for who I was, for what I gave, for what I survived." And then I let those pieces rest. That's the quiet power of decluttering that no one tells you about. It gives you the chance to say goodbye on your own terms. You're not forced by time or circumstance. You choose what to keep, what to honor, and what to release. And in doing so, you make peace with the fact that every goodbye carries within it a new beginning. Now, when I walk past the space where that box once sat, I don't feel emptiness, I feel calm. I've learned that holding on doesn't preserve love, it preserves longing. Letting go allows love to evolve into memory, and memory into strength. Decluttering became my way of honoring the past while stepping gently, courageously into the present. Because sometimes healing isn't about moving on. It's about letting go slowly, tenderly, and finally, on your own terms.
7. I understood that decluttering isn't about dying, it's about staying fully alive. When I first started letting things go, a few friends gently asked if I was getting things in order. I knew what they meant. It's the polite way people talk about aging, as if clearing space means preparing to leave. But that couldn't be further from what I was doing. I wasn't getting ready to end anything. I was finally learning how to begin again. Decluttering for me became less about death and more about vitality. It wasn't about making things easier for someone else later, it was about making life lighter for myself now. For years, my surroundings had been filled with the echoes of other chapters. The furniture that suited a family of 5, the kitchen tools for elaborate dinners I no longer cooked, the paperwork from a career that had long since ended. Each object was a quiet reminder of seasons that had already passed, and while those memories were beautiful, they began to muffle the sound of the life I was still living. The first morning I woke up in my decluttered home, I noticed something different. The sunlight stretched across the floor in a way I'd never seen before. The air felt clearer, my thoughts sharper. I could hear birds outside my window, something that used to blend into the background noise of too much stuff. For the first time in years, my home didn't feel like a monument to the past. It felt like a stage for the present. There's a kind of freedom that comes with realizing you're allowed to evolve, even after 60. I no longer needed my space to prove where I'd been. I wanted it to celebrate where I was. I started dancing again in the living room, sometimes to old jazz, sometimes to nothing at all. I took up simple pleasures I'd forgotten I loved, reading poetry in the morning, sitting outside just to watch the light change,
cooking for one without guilt. People often think decluttering is about loss, about stripping life down to the bare essentials, but that's the misunderstanding. True decluttering is about presence. It's about clearing away the noise so you can hear the heartbeat of your days again. It's about creating room to breathe, to laugh, to notice beauty in ordinary things. I'm not done living, not by a long stretch. I'm just done carrying what no longer belongs to the life I have now. Every shelf I clear, every drawer I empty is an act of choosing aliveness over accumulation. It's not preparation for the end, it's a love letter to the life that's still unfolding, one peaceful, uncluttered breath at a time.
8. I saw that every act of letting go strengthens my future self. There's a quiet kind of power that comes with releasing what no longer serves you. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the steady, grounded kind that builds from within. Each time I opened a drawer and made the choice to let something go, I felt a shift. Small at first, then unmistakable. It wasn't about the object itself. It was about what that decision represented. It was a promise to my future self that I was capable of adapting, evolving, and embracing change with grace. In my younger years, I thought strength meant endurance, holding on, pushing through, surviving no matter what. But the older I've grown, the more I've learned that sometimes strength looks like surrender. It looks like opening your hands and saying, I trust myself enough to move forward without this. Every time I did that, whether it was an old coat that no longer fit, a stack of unread magazines, or sentimental trinkets that once felt too sacred to part with, I felt a little braver. It's strange how decluttering something so physical can touch something so deeply emotional. For me, it became a practice in confidence, not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet conviction that I can handle change. Each cleared space was proof that I wasn't clinging to what defined me before. I was creating space for who I was becoming. And what surprised me most was how empowering it felt. Letting go wasn't about loss anymore. It was about liberation. It was evidence that I could adapt to this new chapter of life, not just with acceptance, but with curiosity. I started to feel lighter, yes, but also more capable. I realized that if I could make peace with releasing old possessions, I could make peace with other kinds of change too. New routines, new relationships, even new versions of myself. For seniors like me, that's one of the most beautiful revelations decluttering can offer. The reminder that we're still capable of growth. We haven't stopped evolving. We've just been carrying too much to notice. Every act of letting go is a muscle we strengthen, a muscle that whispers, you can do this. You can keep growing. Now, when I open my closet or walk through my home, I don't just see order, I see proof of resilience. Proof that I've faced the past without fear, that I've made choices with intention, and that I've chosen joy over attachment. That's the kind of strength no object can ever give, only courage can. And with every drawer I clear, that courage grows just a little bit louder.
There's something extraordinary that happens when your space begins to mirror your soul instead of your storage. Today, my home no longer feels like a museum of what used to be. It feels like a living, breathing reflection of who I am right now. Every shelf, every corner, every surface tells a story of renewal. It's lighter, calmer, more intentional. Decluttering didn't erase my memories. It gave them boundaries.
letting them rest peacefully in the past while I live fully in the present. There was a time when I couldn't walk through a room without feeling haunted by yesterday, by who I used to be, what I used to do, or what I once hoped for. But now I feel surrounded not by ghosts, but by gratitude. Gratitude for the laughter that once echoed here, for the faces that still live in my heart, and for the quiet peace that now fills the space they left behind. My home isn't smaller because I let things go. It's more expansive because it finally breathes. Each empty shelf feels like an open page, waiting to be filled with new memories, not clutter. Each clear table feels like an invitation to start something, a new hobby, a new dream, or simply a new moment of rest. The beauty of this transformation isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional. I've discovered that when we stop clinging to what was, we give ourselves permission to experience what is and what could still be. If there's one truth this journey has taught me, it's this. Love isn't measured by how tightly we hold on. It's revealed in how gracefully we let go. Releasing doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring. It means saying, "Thank you for your place in my story," and making room for what's next. That's not loss. That's liberation.
Support our community and spread the message. Before you leave, here's how you can help us share this idea of a lighter, freer life and keep our community growing strong. 1. Give this video a hype boost. If you found value in this message, you can help other people discover it by using the YouTube Hype feature. It's a simple way to elevate content for our audience. Step 1. On your YouTube app, scroll down and swipe left on the comment area until you find the Hype button. Step 2. Tap Hype. Step 3. Select the number of points you want to contribute. Every point makes a difference. Step 4. Confirm your choice. That's it. You've just helped push this video so more seniors can find it. You get 3 free Hypes every week. When you use Hype consistently, you can even earn a Hype Star badge, showing you as one of this community's most active supporters. 2. Connect and stay updated. While you're here, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. Every story we share is focused on living lighter, wiser, and freer. Go ahead, tap Hype, hit like, and become part of our growing circle. Together, we're doing more than just decluttering our homes. We're actively creating space for joy, purpose, and the next beautiful chapter of our lives.